those of you that are listening on iTunes or Stitcher or wherever it might be, we also have this on YouTube, so you can see the people that are talking, whoever we have in the studio. If you were watching, you would realize that this is not Anthony. This is my good friend Fortunato Lipari, owner of Little Bambino's?
Little Bambino's Pizza.
Awesome pizza joint.
Thank you.
That's not why I'm his friend. There's some other reasons for that.
Yeah.
Thank you for joining us today. This is cool, man.
Thank you for having me.
I didn't know. I knew what this episode had to be about. I went to the Tucson Festival of Books with my family. I think it was 2 weeks ago, and interviewed people, just festival goers. There were a couple of authors, aspiring authors. I got people's input on MMA and writing, and just it was a pretty cool experience. So I was like, I'll do a podcast on that. But I'm doing the LA Times Festival of Books this coming week. It's on Saturday and Sunday. It's the biggest one in the country. So I wanted to get this episode out first. I was like, but Anthony hasn't been around. That was the other reason why I was excited today. I knew coming in here, after you said that you want to do it, you were one of the guys that told me, I think you were one of the ones that told me I should be doing this in the first place, right? Yeah. You've told me to do a lot of things. You've given me a lot of advice, given me a lot of confidence. I owe you a lot. So it's cool to have you come down here and help. And you've also listened to the previous podcast, and so you're giving me advice on how to make it better without hurting my feelings too much. There's that fine point where we all get defensive.
Yeah, that is true.
No, but you're awesome at handling that. And dude, I don't know what I'm doing. Like really, and I'm trying to do this all myself and with Anthony's help. But it's a lot of work. But that's what was really cool about being able to come in here last week. Friday, I come into this place, nice and quiet. I'm wondering what I should do. I almost don't even drive over here, even though it's only like 15 minutes from my house. I'm like, I could stay here and write, but it's like too noisy at my house. I was like, I just need to get away.
Right.
But what was cool was, I was like, you know what? I don't have to just go straight to writing, because I felt like lots of times I put a lot of pressure on myself to get Unlocking the Cage done, so I could go to my other projects and I have all these great ideas all the time. So there are all these things that I want to do. But I was like, well, let's do some yoga first. Let's stretch. I was like, I forced myself to do it. And I put the camera on too. I put on my little GoPro. I was like, you know what? Maybe I'll talk, whatever. I was like, yoga is usually a great time for me to think. And so it was cool, man. It was relaxing. It's what my body needed. It was nice and gentle. I'm not a competitive person at all anymore with jiu-jitsu or anything like that. I don't care about lifting weights. I want to train a little bit, do yoga. And so doing the long, deep stretches for me right now is like, yeah, that's probably what my body needs.
And I hear you on that.
Yeah, so that's all I was doing on Friday. And it gave me time to think about, like, okay, well, what's going on in my life? And one of the cool things, besides that, yeah, man, I'm hitting my perfect day. I was like, I don't even need to interact. Like, I had all these cool interactions with kids and adults throughout the week. The next day on Saturday, I know I'm going to have a lot of fun playing with the kids. I was giving them all monkey rides on open mat, like where they hold on to me and I try to throw them off. Livy's favorite game. So we had all the kids lined up. One of the girls learned, I was letting them put in the rear naked choke on me as hard as they could. I was like, make me fall asleep. I was like, I'm going to tap. Like, everyone knows I'm going to tap. But this one 13-year-old, she put it in so tight. Like, I had a tap. I was choking. And she couldn't believe that I would have gone out if she didn't let go. I was like, no, it was, and there was deep. I was like, look, I'm almost twice your size, but you can do that. How cool is that?
Yeah.
And everyone saw that click. One of the things I was realizing while doing yoga, and one of the things I was glad I was filming it for, was I looked at it later, and I didn't even have to actually look at it. I realized it right then was about limitations. Like, one of the reasons I like it is seeing my limitations. Because I recommend it to everybody. I recommend it for kids, but especially guys my age that are older, that have a belly, that don't do anything at all, that have back problems, that can no longer touch their toes, that just don't think it's even possible anymore. I was like, well, no, it's awesome. Just do this. And so I totally forget my point, but I was talking about why I recommend. Oh, it's seeing, because it shows us our limitations. Yeah. Like, I think we get used to. My brother was talking about our altered sense of normal, or state of normal. But we get used to these limitations. Like, oh, I can't touch my toes. Like, that's just normal. I can't do this. That's just normal. That's just something I'm gonna have to live with. It's like, well, no. And then it also shows me, like, even though I've been working on these things, and like my just ability to touch your toes. Yeah. Like, before I do that, I've had some times where no way I could do it. No way. But now
it's no problem.
Now it's getting way better. It's getting way easier. Everything's improving. but I was feeling it. Like, it takes me a long time to even get to being decent. But watching it on the film, I was like, even when I feel like I'm doing an awesome job, it's like, man, it sucks. Yeah, like, well, you know, that's me being hard on myself, but that's also being realistic, and that's what's cool about having footage and seeing it and like seeing what else you're doing wrong with the pose or whatever else. But
it's inspiring because like the same thing with me when we went to Florida. You know, I've done yoga with my girlfriend, and she's taught me the basics, but
well, were you even really doing it? Didn't she? So
she introduced
didn't you start with her, like, she was trying to get you to do it, but then you wouldn't do it, or did you do it at all?
No, I wouldn't do it at all. And then I went to your house. When I went to your house, that's when we started. I'm like,
so how weird was it when I first said, okay, instead of doing jiu-jitsu tonight, we're going to be doing yoga downstairs?
It was. I mean, it's always been an interest. I'm like, okay, this guy can do it, so can I, and he's cool. He's my buddy. Whatever, let's do it. So we did it. Felt really cool. Something that I never experienced. I mean, I could not move my neck a certain way because I used to wrestle, you know, and some light jiu-jitsu along with kickboxing and boxing. So my head's been, you know, hit around a couple times like a punching bag. So you got the muscles and the kinks that you work out, but doing that yoga and stretching the way I've never stretched before made a world of a difference. And then when we did the Bikram yoga and watching the fighters from all these MMA from
we went with Steve Montgomery, Carl Deaton, and Matt Gutter Van Buren.
Yeah.
All cool guys. But yeah, how cool was that there were 5 of us?
Yeah.
Well, and there were some other men in the class, but 3 real fighters.
Right.
2 that have been in the UFC, and Carl's going to get there. Good luck, Carl.
Yeah. Good luck, man.
But yeah, that was such a cool thing to see.
Yeah.
And so before that, when you first did it, did you see it also as a challenge? Like, this was it harder than you thought it was going to be physically?
Yeah, I didn't expect it to be as hard because I'm old school. I like to work out, lift weights. You know.
So did she love it when you went back to her and told her you were right and
was
awesome?
She was a little bit upset, but at first, but then she was like, yeah, you know, I'm glad you like it. Now let's do it.
Yeah.
So you know.
Oh, the other cool thing I was thinking about was like just what a good mood I've been, man. Like my life is awesome. I can't complain. Like now I've changed my mindset. I used to be and you know this. Like I was the grumpiest, angriest, negative, right? I mean,
yeah, you were.
I mean, and I might have faked like I was a little bit happier, but like okay, overall, like when we first started, we know each other. What maybe is it 20?
At least
20 years or something like that.
Yeah.
When we were bouncing. So we started out when we were bouncing. I was just trying to go from cage fighting, which I hadn't been good at, to professional boxing because I had just taken a stupid fight with no boxing experience, very little fighting. Like, dude, I trained like 3 months before I took my first little fight, and I knew nothing. I had no experience. But then I take that fight where it's going to be in Alabama. What was it called? Fists of Fury or something like that. But I still have the flyer. And they flew me out there for the press conference. It was going to be no gloves, boxing.
Bare knuckle.
Yeah, bare knuckle boxing for $10,000. And I was going to fight the champion, who was a Russian, like, master of martial arts. He teaches their military and all this stuff.
Oh,
I was reading over this recently, all his stuff. And I was like, I would have got killed, you know? But I went to a boxing coach in Long Beach. And so I could kind of go in there and make an appearance. But dude, I was really gonna go do that. So I was gonna just go, and I was like, yeah, I might lose some teeth, I might do whatever. But I don't think it was for the money, dude. At that point, what a lot of people didn't know is, it was super self-destructive. But I was suicidal. Like, dude, I didn't give a shit about myself. So I was like, oh well. Like maybe I'll die. Like maybe you hit me hard enough to that might have been in my head. I'm not saying that's motivations for any other fighters, but that's definitely something that I had, and that I only realized by kind of remembering and going through these last 4 years and talking to all these different fighters. That's the stuff I've kind of had to address and think about. And that's what I'm talking about when I say, you know, think about when you're doing yoga. Because a lot of times I'll come in, think about whatever chapter I'm working on or whatever else. But, dude, when do we ever think and actually ask yourself questions? You might do this a lot more. But I think, like, the average person, I know whenever I'm in the car, I want to put on the radio. When I have the radio on, when I drive to headquarters or whatever, it's awesome. I'll get there. But I realize I didn't think about shit. I didn't get anything accomplished. I didn't do anything. I have to turn off the radio if I want, and then I have to ask myself questions, whether it's about a story, whether about what's going on. And the amount of times where I go to let's say I'm hitting a realization about myself about, you know what, I'm not a good father in this respect. You know, this is something that I have to work on. Dude, what our brain usually does is we hit that and we're like, fuck that, I'm going up and around it and over. And I'm not even dealing with that. I'm not going to deal with that issue. And that's happened to me a lot with yoga, where it's like, no, I'm going to hit that and I'm going to address it. You know, at some point, it might take me a long time, but that's what I'm talking about when I'm saying, yeah, that's where I do lots of my thinking.
I agree. Being a businessman, I do a lot of thinking, even to help you do like covers to the book.
Oh, dude, you know? All right, let's talk a little bit about what you've helped create. So recently was the festival setup, but you helped before that setup with the UFC one, the UFC Fan Expo, and then the very first one, the LA Times Festival of Books. You came up with the idea for Twisted Reunions, that whole cover. I know there's way more, dude, but I forget lots of them. And the podcast, starting up the podcast. So many things where you've had these ideas. You're great at coming up with these ideas, and a lot of it is, you know, my confidence in not having it myself. And you also just have a very unique way of looking at stuff. As an artist, used to be a singer. You know, I think that's what it takes, man. I think it takes a different way of looking at things in order to be successful, and that's probably how it is with your pizza place too.
Yeah, being in the business for so long and watching my parents doing their business and seeing the rights and wrongs and seeing what you can do to make things better, you know, and also to seeing on your success, watching you flourish, because you're growing faster than you even know yourself, and you're grasping it more and more every time when you're starting to do like the podcast. Like we talked about with the books. When we did Twisted Reunion, it was a complete cover. I mean, we sat down and covered and just kept going until we came up with from a stitching of skulls to one giant skull, and then making it smoked out, and it just really came out to a real positive effect for you.
So another thing I realized here, I had written to Livy School about wanting to do something with the class for the book. But library time was going to be too short story time. So what we're going to do is when half the class goes to the library time, we get to talk to the other class, the rest of the class, about the book, read it to them, talk about characters. We're even probably going to have them help pick the next kind of character, like what animal will be in the next book. New student. Okay. You know, maybe they'll even come up with a name for it.
So there's sequels to this book.
Oh, yeah. No, I told Olivia that I want her to have a book written. We'll write one book. We'll shoot for a book a year. And then by the time she's in 5th grade, you know, she could write them on her own. I was like, by the time you're in college, you'll have like a dozen. Yeah. It's like, which would be awesome.
Oh, that'd be that's a nice pipeline.
But that's only if she enjoys it. So that's what I'm saying too. And that's what I tell her with jiu-jitsu. I was like, we had this talk last night. And I said, look, hon, if you don't want to do jiu-jitsu, you don't have to. I don't care. I was like, if I don't want to do jiu-jitsu, I don't have to. I don't care. I was like, if it's fun, we do it. Right, you know, I was like, and that's how we approach anything. If writing is fun, then we do it. If you don't feel like it, like there were times with her, like we still haven't finished book 2 of Triple S Agency, the kindergarten one, because we just have, neither one of us, it hasn't been that important to us. We're still going to do it, and we're going to set time, and we'll knock it out as soon as, but make sure she's ready for it. But it made me realize too that right now it's funny that I'm more passionate about her book. Well, in a way. Because I just submitted, I'm going to submit a proposal to South Dakota Festival of Books. I think it's in Deadwood. I have a friend out there, Don, who read Every Precious Second, the older man. I'm going to go out there and finally meet him in person.
That was a great, to have him read that, I applaud you.
That was such a cool thing for me to have happen.
It gave me chills.
It really helped me a lot. It was super cool. Yeah. I forget what episode we talked about that, but so he's out there. He said it'd be fun for the whole family, so we're going out there. I said, you know what? If I'm going to go out there and do a festival, why not try to present? Before I would think, well, who am I to present? You know, I don't have anything worth telling. But I was like, well, we'll give it a shot. I could either talk about MMA, because Unlocking the Cage will be coming out right around that time, probably like October, and all the lessons I've learned could be about that. It could be about there's a big biker convention that weekend, so there's a lot of bikers in town. Could be like horror. I was like, how cool would it be to read horror at a bar? I don't know about that, and how many bikers would really want to sit down and listen to a story? Probably not that many. But then I was like, well, why not talk about what I'm going to do with Livy's school, and talk with parents too about, look, you can do this with your kids. You can create this if they're interested, but don't think that they can't create their own book. And even if it's not a full-on book, with a nice cover and everything else, you can still develop those ideas, create this thing, help them grow that way. That might be something that they really enjoy.
Yeah.
I used to love it, but I never pursued it because I didn't think I was going to be any good at it. Probably. It took me a long time to get that confidence. Another cool thing that's going to happen with Livy, and it's going to happen because I'm not going to limit myself. I'm just going to go for it. Is we're going to put out another book together, because all she wants to read is she just read Lord of the Rings. No, she just read all the Harry Potters 1 through 7. She loves reading fantasy. She's devouring anything dragons. She loves dragons.
Wow.
The tattoo on my back is her riding a dragon. She's going to be in the back as an archer. The tattoo is going to be that character is based off of her. Jake's going to be on an armored lion.
That's hot.
Jen's going to be a sorceress holding open this portal, and I'll be the old knight walking through. And that goes with the story is the little boy on my leg who's just appearing into that portal. That's him coming out with these people behind him. And so when I came up with the idea, I was like, oh man, that would look awesome. I had it designed on 99 Designs. So I wanted a good idea of it first before I even took it to a tattoo artist. But I was picturing, I was like, this will make a cool cover of a book. But then that's all I did with it. And I'd written, the very first book I tried writing was a fantasy novel.
I remember that.
Yeah, and it wasn't any good and didn't go anywhere, so I ended up chucking it. Or actually, I still have it. I found it. I didn't chuck it. I just put it at the bottom of the drawer. But I was thinking, I was like, I have an interest in it. She has an interest in it. I was like, you know what? Let's just make this. This will be our story. So we're going to write a fantasy novel.
That's awesome.
I don't know how much she's going to be helping. I'll co-author with her if she puts in the work. And I was like, if I put in too much work, then I'll give her a credit at the front of it.
Yeah.
But I was like, why not write in another genre? It'll be cool. I was like, I already have, just one day of sitting on the mat. I think I was thinking about it for 2 hours that day. I wrote so much. It was cool. Anthony helped me come up with some other ideas. But now that I know that the tattoo is going to come to life in my story, I was like, that's just dope. So I'm excited about that.
That's cool.
It's going to be cool.
The outline, and then you do every little piece as a chapter goes.
Yeah, and every short story is going to be a different. So it's going to be a collection of short stories, essentially, or chapters. But each one will be written from one of the different characters' points of view.
Nice.
So that's going to be cool. And then I'm going to talk to the tattoo artist about maybe just doing badass drawings for each of the covers. So I already have everything designed.
Nice.
The only thing that sucks about the back tattoo is, summer. And training. Not being able to train, that's going to suck.
That's the only time I get tattoos is in the winter.
Yeah.
And at the end of, right when it hits fall.
Yeah.
So you don't have to wear too heavy of a jacket where it rubs. Like when I did my back, I just did the outline, and when I was just wearing light clothes, and just finish it off. My girl would put the lotion on my back.
Yeah.
But I would have to sleep face down. I don't sleep face down. I always sleep on my face up.
Yeah,
and it's hard.
I didn't even think about any of that, and then even not even being able to use my sauna, the infrared sauna.
Yeah.
Although I just figured a way around it, dude. I put my foot through the through the hand. It looks kind of funny, but it works.
Yoga position.
Yeah, exactly. I was like, I'm stretching, and the other one is up. But yeah, the other thing that was cool. So I took Jake to headquarters on Thursday because my buddy Adam from Rhode Island was gonna be in town, and he wanted to train there. And I was like, I had already told him I'd meet him. I was like, I got Jake, so I don't know if this is gonna work. Is it worth it for me to drive an hour there with Jake, not be able to train, probably won't even be able to talk to Adam, and then have to drive back and deal with a cranky baby? But I was like, you know what? Whatever. I was like, we dressed up the same. We put on our matching spats, rash guard. I had my shorts on. Dude, I'm thinking about it while we're walking in downtown LA to the gym. This is like 11 o'clock in the morning, and we're leaving is 1:30. We're walking down there dressed like this, like we have superhero outfits on. People are looking at us. Most of them are smiling, but even like dudes with their gangsters, little wannabe gangsters with their pants sagging down, looking hard. I was like, really? I was like, gonna look hard at us.
God.
But it's funny because it's just I don't care, and that's cool to get to that point where I used to be so self-conscious, man. That was like one of my biggest things. Now I was like, And probably a big part of it is because Jake was with me.
Yeah.
It's like when you have a little kid, like
You have
don't
to.
care.
You got to act their age in a
Yeah,
sense.
yeah.
You got to have the responsibility to act their age
Yeah.
because then you're the fun dad. I learned
Yeah.
that through my girl. The same thing. I mean, I give her props. Like the things that I taught you with Jake and stuff. I've learned it from her. She's like,
well, and it's also an allowance. It's like, oh yeah, I can do this, like, because I don't have to be a tough guy.
even with unlocking the cage. Now that we're getting that thing going.
Yeah.
I mean, you're on chapter 17. That's huge.
Yeah, I just finished 17. Now I'm on 18. Oh. Well, yeah, 18 does come after 17.
Yeah.
But I was trying to think of if I was actually on it. You know what? It's because I haven't actually started the chapter. Like, I'm on it, but I finished 17 last week, but I haven't sat down because of everything else that's going on in my life. I haven't sat down and started with that chapter. But I do know it's going to be a good one. It's on bullying. And just how terrible.
What's chapter 17?
Chapter 17 is confidence. I talked with Coach Mike Winklejohn.
Mm-hmm.
He really stressed the importance of confidence in a fighter. And then it got me thinking, the very next day after talking with Coach Wink, I run into Frank Mir. He was at the gym. I was going to go up to him and introduce myself. But then he looked at me, he's like, where do I know you from? And I was like, oh, well, we used to spar. He used to beat the shit out of me. But he was like...
See that right there?
Yeah.
You did that.
I was like, you killed a lot of my brain cells. I'm not sure how often we were sparring, but I think it was pretty often. And I never... Like, when I say I was sparring Frank Mir, like, I was one of his beat-up dummies. Like, I knew I wasn't going to beat him. And I write about that in the book. Like, because I was thinking about that, like, okay, he was 7 years younger. He was a black belt in I think, Kempo or something like that. Already dangerous on the ground. He's already fighting the UFC, and that was the guy I had to go against. So I knew, like, I never had the confidence that I could beat him, and I never did. And even though, like, maybe our striking was, not even his striking was way better. So I was going into that, but that's also how I was going into lots of my fights. I was always putting myself as the underdog, never believing in myself.
Yeah.
So it makes sense. And then in that chapter, I mentioned the 3 young kids that I interviewed there. And there was a kid earlier, Troy Lamson. No, they're not kids; they're young adults. So they're 22. I think these guys are all like 22, 23. But Troy, when I met him, his confidence was amazing. I think he was already 6-0 as an amateur.
Wow.
And he just knew he's going to be dominated. Like, his goal is he's going to be a champion, and that's what he said that's what his goal is, and that's what he's going to achieve, and he's going to do whatever it takes to get there. I was like, yeah, he's right. Unless something happens like crazy, he's going to be successful because of that. And, everything is not just words. But there were a couple guys, Steve Garcia and Andres Quintana. They're both at Mean One MMA, which is also in Albuquerque. But both of them, 22, 21, just that confidence, like, no, this is what they're going to do. This is a mission. They're not going to lose when they step foot in there. And how important that is.
When are you going back?
I don't know. I want to go out. It might not be until the book's released, maybe October. But I definitely do want to go back. That'll be one of the places. Coach Wink and his wife Heather, they're awesome people. Everyone I talked with, I met so many cool people there. And everywhere I go, if I talk, that's why I don't want to talk too much about one gym or one person, because man, all these people that have helped influence me. That's one of the things that sucks about, and I was struggling with writing the book, is who do I leave out?
That's hard.
And
that's hard.
I can't have everyone's name in there, 400 people, and that wouldn't make for a good story. So I have to pick different people that had a certain effect on me, and then I'm telling it chronologically, so I have to make it make sense that way as well. But
how many states did you hit?
25. 25
out of the 50
the first plan was to hit them all, but then Jake came along, and so that kind of changed things. And then also, man, life on the road was not. It was cool. And, dude, I got so much out of it, but
you got a lot of experience. What a real author does. And you're going to the source. You're going and getting what you want to get and making it happen, and then pulling it apart and go boom, 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 boom. Later, you got yourself your book, and you're done. You're good to go.
And it feels like play. Yeah, I mean, not always. Like, there were definitely times where I'm working, I'm barely sleeping, and hauling ass and just driving place to place, and where it totally sucked. But dude, I was so inspired and motivated the whole time. Like,
I experienced that with you for a whole.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, we went to Florida for what, a whole week.
A week.
Yeah, that was really cool. You got to meet Ricardo. You got to. Steve Montgomery. He fights tonight. AFC.
Does he?
Yeah. So hopefully, Steve.
Come on, Steve, luck.
buddy. Yeah.
Good times.
Yeah. No, he was a really cool dude.
Good kid.
Yeah, I'd interviewed him on Skype, and I knew I wanted to go see him. He was originally from the Florence Fight Farm, where I had trained when I lived in South Carolina for a year.
That's how you met him.
Yeah, I guess we had met once. Like I think we were in the same place. I think he said there's a picture of us in the same place.
Really?
I don't remember. He was a really super young kid, and dude, I don't know how often I went there.
The weasel.
Yeah, the creepy weasel.
The creepy weasel.
So not only did I not have the confidence in fighting, man, but I didn't have it in life. Like I was not a confident kid. I super low self-esteem, dislike myself, and this is stuff that other people probably had no idea. I think I hid it pretty well. It wasn't until I actually went to a psychologist. I went to a psychologist, and on the very first time, like after listening to me telling my story, he's like, all he had to do is tell me. He's like, you're a perfectionist, and this is why. And he explained to me how much I put on myself, and he told me, get rid of the word should and need to, but just being made aware of what was going on with myself, and like, 'cause I could never understand why I disliked myself, why I didn't have confidence in myself, all these different things. But it's definitely true, and it's something that I've had to work on. Unlocking the cage has helped a ton with that. Yeah. But what's really helped a ton is you have helped a ton, and I have a couple other friends similar, like Glenn. Glenn probably hasn't helped as much, but just that's only because Nato's here.
Then I got to hear it vice versa.
Yeah.
Wink,
Nato's the best. But no, having the confidence, telling me to do these things, to do the book festival, to do the UFC, to do Unlocking the Cage, to say, I'm an author. Because that's another reason that's hindered. I don't want to say hinder my success, but
slow the pace down.
Slow me down. And everything happens at the right time,
right
reasons.
There's a reason, exactly.
But, and dude, I haven't even really done marketing because I handle everything. Right. My sister helps a little bit with stuff, but as far as like marketing books, like there's so much stuff I should be doing. And I realized, and I believe, I was like, you know what? I'm starting to get some confidence in my writing too, from readers' reviews. That's helped a lot. It doesn't help when my friends tell me that books are awesome because they have to tell me that. But when random people write to me, like Don, when he wrote to me about 25 Perfect Days, when I hear different things, I was like, okay. I was like, that's cool. You helped with setting up the booth for the book festival. Yeah. So we're trying to figure out how to do this, how to make it where we can share my stuff. I have the big posters of the horror, or like Twisted Reunion, Big Skull,
big old
25
skull,
Perfect Days, a cross, a flag, and Bright Side, Try Not to Die. So all my stuff's over here with a nice skull with some candy. And then over here is this stuffed animals.
Sweet little girl.
Yeah, sweet little girl. And
it worked out.
But she's not there. I'm there. I'm the one working. I'm the one working the booth. And I was like, I don't want to really work a booth, especially because it wasn't hot out, but it was uncomfortable a little bit, and being in a booth the whole time, and I'm not going to make my daughter do that. So she stopped by, and she was there maybe half an hour, kind of, and like not interacting with people, because it was funny. She had told me beforehand. I was telling her, hey, like the realities of working a booth, and you're gonna have people come over and look at it and not buy it, and whatever else. And I hate being a salesman. Like that's not me. I'm a dude, such a introvert, and man, just getting over that. But I forced myself to deal with it, and that's
good.
That's something, dude. That's something I've gotten from having to go around the country, interview these people. Where, dude, I'd have a hard time going up and even calling someone, let alone going in and introducing myself. So I had to get over all that, and then jiu-jitsu and MMA, like that makes you're putting yourself in uncomfortable positions, dude. Some dude's junk might be right here, you're going like, north south, or
did he wash?
Or you're getting choked or whatever. You're putting yourself in these terrible positions.
Yeah, very
and
true.
It was like, but if you could deal with that, you can deal with this. I was meeting people, so and that's one thing I'm trying to make myself do and have the kids do is like, no, any obstacle, that's just an opportunity. We just got to figure out what it is. Like, Anthony not being here to film the podcast, like, okay, that's not an obstacle. It's like, it's an opportunity. It's like, how cool is it that it worked out? I think just since I've just gone with the flow and things have been so much better, and I started the day being like, today's gonna be awesome. Why is there a reason to think otherwise? If something bad changes it and it's not awesome, I'll deal with that at that moment. But until then, why not be happy? Oh, but we're at the festival. Livy's not there. So it's me, kind of big, not necessarily the friendliest looking guy.
No.
It's funny, people don't think I'm the author either. They just think I'm some dude working the booth. A lot of people were surprised. I was like, yeah, I guess I see it. I don't look like an author.
Yeah,
That's
you gotta
cool.
get the glasses or something.
Yeah.
Pocket pen.
Get a pipe. I gotta carry a pipe around.
You should.
I'll start
Hey,
doing Yeah.
how you doing, Mike?
But I had on sleeves. I wasn't showing any tattoos or anything like that. I was dressed up nice. So semi nice. But we were talking. Oh, but so me not looking that friendly. But I have the kids stuff. So I have all the horse stuff and then the kids stuff right there. So I'm like, oh yeah, come on kids, get some candy.
Oh God.
Oh yeah. Oh, don't look at that. No. Stay away from that.
Good,
no, I just felt like a
R,
creep.
rated
Yeah,
R.
like I'm trying to lure parents in, you know.
I can only imagine.
Yeah.
They're like, yeah.
So I just tried to stay to the side. I was like, oh yeah, my daughter writes that. So I wasn't really pitching her book as much as I should have.
You're like, it's on a standing point. Yours is right there at the same time.
Yeah.
You're like,
yeah, pretty much.
there you go. It's got to feel like.
Yeah,
I
I almost put it down at one point, but I was like, no, I'm going to stick with it.
Yeah,
and that's how I saw those people. I saw that it had some success, and so that was cool. One of the things that the festival helped me with was I put out a sign that said, "Dare to read the first page and be on the podcast." But because I was like, all I have to do is draw someone in. So someone that's attracted to one of these covers, if they come over, I need them to, like, if they read the first page, either they're going to like it a lot or they'll hate it. I was like, and that's kind of nice that it's worked out that way. Because, yeah, like, dude, I can kind of guess a lot of people I can guess people that are not going to like my books. Usually. Right. Like, and I saw them, they were like Sunday morning crowd.
You know.
Someone's all buttoned up and nice and neat and looking like they got everything together.
This is the guy from 50 Shades of Grey.
Yeah.
He's all Mr. Clean Cut, and in the bedroom he's got all the whipped cheese and all that stuff going down. You imagine?
I've never read it.
No. I watched the movie. I didn't read it.
I haven't watched the movie either. I don't watch movies. We're talking about that, but we don't have time to go into it. We do have a lot to talk about, and that's what I realized too this morning. I was like, no, we got so much to talk about. Trying to fit it all in, not gonna happen. So just come back in when you have time. I know you got your businesses, Little Bambino's, awesome pizza. I hate promoting anything that's unhealthy. This guy's trying to kill people with his food, but it's delicious.
Slice at a time.
So
it's really good.
if you're gonna do it, and you live over there, I would say do it.
It's down in Moreno Valley.
I sometimes had you drive it out here, right?
Yeah, we bring it down for the kids.
And everyone loved it.
Yeah,
good stuff.
I'll bring it down with thin crust.
I'm gonna give him some booklets to have at his shop. So I'll autograph them. Some special ones that we will be handing them out at the LA Times Festival of Books, which we were going to be at this weekend. So Saturday and Sunday, booth 958, Team Tullius.
Nice.
If she shows up, I don't know if she's going to show up. She doesn't show up, she doesn't get any money. That's what I'm telling her. Yep.
Gotta climb the ropes one way or another. You're gonna have to teach. That's how you do it.
And I also told her
it's tough love. It's tough love.
Yeah.
That's all. You got to do it.
Yep, it's good for her. And what else was cool at the festival? So besides feeling like a creep, but was seeing people's reaction. So I say, dare to read the first page. I'd say like 8 out of 10 people that read it, especially Brightside, like they wanted. There was one girl, she had almost picked up Twisted Reading, or she was looking at it. I was like, oh no, I think you need Brightside. I was like, read the first 2 paragraphs, that's all. And I was like, well, know whether or not you like it. And then her and her boyfriend was standing right there. And I looked back over. I was talking to someone else. I look over, and she's on like page 4. I was like, that's a good sign. She had a big smile on her face. She's like, oh my god, that's awesome.
That's awesome.
She didn't know I was the author either. So.
Oh really?
So
that's a good thing, because then people are honest with you. They're like, this guy's too young. He doesn't look like it. He's got a shaved head, a goatee. He doesn't look like the kind of guy that would write a book. But lo and behold.
Well, part of the podcast was. I was asking people different things. So I asked them about what they like to read, and also what they thought about MMA, what their opinions were, because that's one of my big things that I'm going to look at with my study is, what's the general public's perception. I thought the book festival would be a pretty interesting crowd. And I was surprised, like I had this one 14-year-old girl give a great explanation of how she sees MMA, and it's because her father had boxed. And then there were a couple guys that loved it, a lot of people, some that didn't. So we'll share that. Here's some of their clips. Thank you to everyone that was brave enough to get on it too. You're here at the Book Festival. Have you been a reader for a long time? Like, do you love to read?
I love reading. It's like an escape. It calms down my stress level, for school.
Awesome. What kind of genres do you like, and who are some of your favorite authors?
I like reading fantasy and mystery a lot. Stuff that's suspenseful, and I don't really have no favorite author. Just as long as it's a good book, you know.
I am a professional bookaholic, and I love to read mystery, horror, science fiction, anything really.
I've always been a good reader, and in the last 10 or 12 years, I've become an avid reader. I call myself a bookaholic or a readaholic.
Sam, are you a big reader? Do you read pretty often?
I do.
What do you like to read?
Variety, sci-fi, horror, thrillers.
Do you usually find one author and stick with them?
No, not anymore.
Okay.
I used to, but not anymore.
Who are some of your favorite authors?
When I was younger, Stephen King. Read a lot of him. Daniel Suarez.
I like a lot of fantasy. I like some historical fiction, but it depends. I like once in a while a good mystery, but it wasn't my go-to. I like science fiction.
Okay.
I like kind of futuristic, dystopian kind of stuff.
Awesome.
sometimes.
Very cool. That's
So-
what I write. I like that too. Now, who are some of your favorite authors? Do you have any favorites? Or anyone that's influenced you at all?
I like Orson Scott Card just because he goes very in depth as far as the psychology of the characters,
Okay.
which I think is fascinating.
Anywhere from 2 to 3 books a week.
Oh, wow.
I have at least 20 books on reserve at the library at any given time. All of my allotments plus some of my wife's allotment.
I like to read more horror, thriller novels. My favorite author is Jonathan Mayberry. He just so happens to be here today.
Oh, awesome.
Oh yeah, when I was a kid, those Scholastic Book Club, I think was what it used to be called way back when. We would order books, and the kids would order books, and so the teacher would get a box of books. Say, okay, this one's for him, and this one's for her, and these two are for that person. Well, the rest are for Rich. And so I would take them home, and that was it. I had a library in my room when I was a kid.
We're here because my son Juanito is an aspiring author.
Oh,
So
awesome.
we want to come check it out and meet some local authors.
Very cool. What is he now? Has he already written a book, or are you working on that with him?
It's him, and he's written a lot of short stories, and he's working on a book right now.
Awesome.
My name is Augie Nust. Books with me that one of them I'm looking for a publisher for. That's why I'm here at the Tucson Festival. This is one of them: spiritual science, higher consciousness thinking, and how to access the universal consciousness. Things that I write about, I try to back it up with quantum physics and discoveries. I had a download of universal information, and that's what I'm writing.
Are there any authors that influenced you?
Oh, absolutely. Like any writer, you start as a reader. Ray Bradbury's on the top of the list, of course. It's very telling that until I was about 20, I frequently confused Asimov with Einstein because of the way my dad talked about him. Lots of science fiction. Started getting into more mystery and detective in college.
Okay.
Robert Parker, Dashiell Hammett, all those guys, John Sanford. And now I've spent the last couple of years where I'll put a post on Facebook saying, hey, everybody, what should I read this year? And so I've been reading a lot of various things from a lot of various genres and picking up very cool things from each of those. My main goal in writing is to never have a real job again so that I can stay at home with my kids. I've written for Black Belt Magazine, I've done a lot of local sports coverage, a lot of work for business owners, copywriting, things like that. I've got a young adult series coming out that's steeped in the martial arts using the Hakunin cycle from Japanese mythology. Kind of the Percy Jackson thing, only with Japanese myth. With the exception of the things that were given to me by my birth family, pretty much everything positive in my life. I met my wife in a capoeira class when I was in Japan studying. Everything that I built in my writing career comes from the discipline and the focus that I learned in the martial arts. And pretty much every good thing about me comes from that, except for the lessons of my father, my grandfather, my mother. So I love MMA. My own background in martial arts was I was a wrestler in high school, got into college, tried a little bit of that, but college wrestlers are insane. It's absolutely nuts. But I missed the competition, I missed the physical exertion, so I got into kickboxing and Muay Thai. And then from there into traditional Kempo. And these days, most of what I do is capoeira and Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. It's been a part of my life since I was single-digit age. MMA in general, kind of like we were talking about before the cast, it's very hit or miss. You got this very macho, very posturing culture in some gyms that we sometimes see in the behavior of some of the UFC stars. But at the same time, there's also gyms and trainers who are very much into MMA as like traditional martial arts, a way to develop yourself into a better person. You take a look at Holly Holm's behavior after her win and after her loss, and being not just a badass, but being a complete and focused and centered human being who understands that martial arts is really about being powerful enough to be nice to people. Absolutely, and I think it's hit and miss as to which fighter is a martial artist and which one is a fighter, which is more of an athlete. And one of the things about UFC that's been great is it allows people from these different philosophies to get together in an arena with some public attention and some money to be made, so we can kind of test those theories against each other.
I have two favorite fighters in the MMA, the Korean Zombie and Brock Lesnar, who's back in the World Wrestling Entertainment. I think it can also work as a way of self-defense, because I take American Kempo and Jiu-Jitsu.
Awesome.
Me and my brother were both American first degree black belts. So.
What do you think, what else has martial arts given you? Do you think it's helped you at all develop as a person?
Yeah, it kind of makes me feel like that I should be a person who helps people.
When I first saw you fight, pretty much it was like underground, is what it was, which I think was kind of cool in a sense, because you're doing something that wasn't, I guess, legalized at that time.
I think that was a big part of the draw for me.
You know,
something I wasn't supposed to do.
Yeah, something you wasn't supposed to do, and here it is. You're doing it, and as a friend / spectator and watching it, it came down to that same feeling as well. Hey, this isn't what we're supposed to do, but we're gonna go watch this. You know, it's kind of like street drag racing, where back in our day when we just got out of high school in our 20s, it was more like, hey, let's go do that, or let's go watch it, because it's something we're not supposed to do. It's that adrenaline that you get. But watching it today, I enjoy watching it so much more than I do boxing, because boxing just, you know what, you're just there, you're watching it. This has more activity going on. It's not as brutal as what other people think. Most of the time the fights stop because somebody taps out. At times does it get brutal? Absolutely it does. And maybe that's what kind of strikes me to saying, hey, this is kind of cool,
It seems like it's more, people really care about the other people that are in this sport, which seems kind of funny to say when you actually look at what they're doing to each other, but I think you know what I mean. It just, every time I've seen it, I've been impressed with how the people interact with each other.
Yeah, I think there's
I don't think it has a purpose. I feel like they're just fighting for money, but I don't know. It's weird to me. Like, I don't like football either, because I don't like the tackling.
I guess I got into MMA back in the old days when UFC was no holds barred, and there were guys like Tank Abbott that just got in there and just killed each other with however they could. And of course, it's been refined. I think boxing is probably a little more dangerous because its concentration on striking to the head is more prevalent in boxing. But
I started watching MMA fighting and UFC fighting, stuff like that, with my grandpa from a very, very young age. He would just tell me, come here, learn about more stuff, since he didn't want me to grow up the normal way girls were raised. He wanted me to have more diversity in my life. And he told me, he would just like make me watch anything, and he told me that it was like not only a sport but a real profession, because people trained for it, they worked very hard, and it was very honorable even, and that it was a great way to and that the people that were there weren't like stupid or just brawn, because like he told me when he was in the ring that the people he met there were some of the smartest people, because you have to be smarter than the guy in the cage with you. Well, I used to watch like my grandpa's old fights like on tapes, and on the ring he looked like he was like, when he was like fighting over there, he didn't look like a nice person at all. He looked really mean and intimidating, and not like the kind of person you want to talk with. But like on the other side, he's like very smart. He has a degree in psychology and psychiatry, and he is very kind. He now works at an animal shelter. He's gentle, which I don't think many people see, because there are many sides to a person, and fighting might be just one side for them. And they're like, they can also be smart, intellectual, compassionate, like a human being.
That's awesome.
When it first started, it was like something completely different. Didn't bother me. I thought it was pretty interesting.
Awesome.
You know, and it's really changed from when it first started.
Now, do you appreciate it more now? Do you see a higher level of athletes?
Absolutely, absolutely.
Okay.
I mean, they're more well trained, more skilled fighters. You know, it's.
And how do you look at it? Do you look at MMA as a fight or a sport? Combination of both?
I look at it as a sport. I mean, it's a fighting sport, but it is a sport, absolutely.
I enjoy it, actually. I think, I haven't watched it as much lately, but my dad was always into it when I was younger. I never really watched it, but you know, he would tell me about some of his favorite fighters, and then I started watching it, and I enjoyed it. I like seeing how different fighters approach things, like it's kind of depending on their personality and how it matches up. I think the reason they don't fight as much is because it's not as much a social norm, you know. But I think women could do it just as much as men, you know. I think it's a personality thing. I don't think it's a gender thing necessarily. I feel like they come in all shapes and sizes, honestly, because I mean, maybe a majority of them are out to prove something, but I think some of them just enjoy it, and I think it's all kind of part of the game, whether or not you can best someone else. I think, you know, and I appreciate the ones that treat it like a sport, you know, and they can still have respect for their opponent afterwards. You know, this was our interaction, and then now we're friends. Still be friends.
It's certainly a sport in the aspect that these guys have to be skilled and they have to be in shape. I mean, if they don't have their cardio down, they can't do what they do for 15 minutes. I mean, the average person can't do that for 2 or 3 minutes. So they're athletes in that sense. So yes, it's more of a sport than some things we consider sports, like golf and things of that nature. But it's a step away from an exhibition, which, you know, wrestling is exhibition entertainment. So it's kind of halfway in between, but I enjoy it. I guess it's the basic instincts from men from way back that involved in fights and that sort of thing. Of course, you're seeing more fighters now that are coming out of college wrestling, so they're more educated. But I think that as a generalization, fighting is something that's probably in a lower class of citizenry. Not that everybody's there, but generally fighters are there because they've grown up in a rough environment and they've been fighting all their lives. You don't see somebody at the age of 22, 23 generally just taking up the sport, but there are some. But a lot of fighters are very articulate, and there are some that come across as just who they are. But by and large, you know, I enjoy them. They're salt of the earth people, and when they say something, you get exactly what they're saying. You don't have to interpret it. It's fun to watch it.
I see it as one, it makes millions of dollars, so it's a source of entertainment. But being that I trained as a fighter as well, I loved it because I had anger issues, and it was the best way to legally fight without being arrested. It's what the public sees it's some violent thing, and it's like, it's not that. It's a form of it at this point is a form of artistry.
What kind of reaction do you have if you see it or a commercial?
I don't watch it. Sometimes it's on because I have 2 teenage boys and my husband. I wouldn't watch it by myself, and I'm not really interested. But I think that it's amazing what they're able to do, and I think that it does take a lot of talent. I don't think it's just people getting in a ring just for fighting. But I did take my husband to an event once for his birthday, and it was extremely hard to watch. I had my eyes down the majority of the time.
Now, do you not like seeing someone get hurt? Is that part of it? Is that the hard part?
Yeah, it was just a little gruesome for me. When I was younger, I used to be able to watch like horror movies and read gruesome things, and the older I get, I don't know why, I lose tolerance. I think it's anybody who puts themselves through the training that they have to do and how they know so many different aspects of the sport is amazing to me.
Which comes to mind when you think of a fighter?
I've met youth fighters, and they're really down to earth. But
I've actually done some martial arts in my day, and so from a technical standpoint, I was always interested in how it was that the mixed martial arts stuff was actually happening, what they were doing specifically. But I haven't watched any fights in a long time. I really don't know what the trends are these days.
Okay.
Oh, the other cool thing about the festival was, because I had to figure out, okay, what age do I allow someone to pick up these books that I just said dare to read? Because I had some kids come up, and I'm like, wait, how old are you? And there were a couple like 11, 12, 13-year-olds that were drawn right to each Twisted Reunion, and even Brightside, and even 25. And I'm like, maybe you should get your parents first. And like there are a couple that just took off. They're like, screw this old man.
Well, I would say 15 is a good.
But a lot went and got their parents. So what was cool, a lot of them went and got their parents, and they came back over. They asked their parents, and then we had some cool conversations on and off camera on, okay, what age do you let your kids read this stuff? And lots of kids got on it. They were like 13 and 14. They're like, yeah, we started when I was like 12, and my parents never censored us and all that. And I forget what her name is. I think it's Gabby. She had a really good point, like why she doesn't censor her kids. So the same reason I'm not going to censor mine is because, dude, everything that I was censored from, that's what I did. I wanted to rebel. I wanted to. If someone told me I couldn't do it, I was like, that's what I'm doing. If I couldn't cuss, every other word out of my mouth when no one was around was an F word. It was like, yeah, that's why I probably did a lot of things. So when something is not allowed, but for me, it was like, I don't want to be a bad influence. Not to say my writing is bad influence, but definitely kind of hardcore. One mother, she read the first page. Her daughter wanted to buy Twisted Reunion, but I told the mom, hey, maybe you should take a look at it because it's about a pornographer. And and that's how the book starts. And she asked, like, well, is it this sexual throughout the whole thing? I was like, no. I said, but I was like, that's kind of the worst thing first, so people know. Another.
What'd she say?
She was cool, and they bought it. Okay. Yeah, and she appreciated that, and she thought it was cool. It was really cool because Rich King, my good friend, dude, he was born right next to me. I think I'm less than a year older than him. Born right next door, great friends all our life, and like a genuinely good dude. Like very, very few of those. I'd say like a couple other friends are like that. But he's one of the.
You always have to have
Tucson.
a handful.
Yeah,
at least.
Yeah, and so he's definitely one of them. And he was at the very first LA Times Festival of Books I did 4 years ago. And he brought his whole family. And so that was really cool. And one of the things that happened was his son, Zach, I think he was 11 at the time or 12. He grabbed Brightside and Rich was like, whatever. And then he went into the back and started reading. And like before the family even left, he was like on page 60 or something ridiculous. And he wasn't even a reader.
Wow.
But then he just blew through it. And since then he's gotten all my books, and Rich was always giving it to him, and he's cool.
Wow.
Yeah,
how old is
he? Now he's 15.
And we picked up your book at what age?
11.
Wow. You censor your kids, if at all?
So I don't censor what my kids listen to or what my kids read. I would rather educate them and teach them the difference between right and wrong rather than hide something from them. Because I firmly believe that the more you hide it, the more curious they will become, and they're going to want to explore. And I would rather be the one to talk to them about it so that they learn. I'm not going to say learn from my mistakes because they're going to make their own, but there's no point in hiding it from them. They're going to see it, they're going to read about it somewhere. I would rather be the one to talk to them and give them as much truth as I can. And if I don't know the answer, then we research it together.
That's awesome. And I appreciate that as a parent. Like, that's great advice. Now, at what age were you able to start reading Stephen King? Did you have to get permission from your parents, or?
No, they just picked out a book.
Okay.
Plus, I also saw the movies.
Okay.
And I started around age 12, which was the first book I read was Cujo. It was a really interesting book.
It's first. Now, do you think kids your age are generally mature enough to be reading that kind of stuff?
I believe they are, because with all the violence going on in the world, like in Michigan, like that one area with the Boston bombing, Columbine, 9/11, all that stuff happened just way back.
Reason why I shouldn't have other kids read horror?
Oh no, they should really experience it. If they're like into like horror movies, my personal soft love it.
And like I probably started reading books like this when I was 12, but I think it's because I guess I'm mature, I guess, for my age.
Yeah.
Mom kind of just decided as long as you're not being corrupted by books, even though kind of already was. She told me anything I read was fine as long as it wasn't really explicit and I was at least 3 years under the recommended age.
Okay.
And I started reading more adult books when I was around 12.
All right, so we do have to wrap up because I got to go change out with the babysitter, pick up Jakey. Thank you for being on. We end every episode on. Yeah, man, we'll do this a bunch whenever you can make it down.
Yeah.
Every episode I end with a short story, or either a short story or a chapter from a book. Tee Quillin, who narrated Each Dawn I Die, 12 short stories, did a tremendous job. I decided to hire him for Brightside, even though I had already recorded like 18 out of 19 chapters. I realized that I'm not a narrator. Like I'm not trained in that. That, you know what? And it was recorded over a long period of time. I said, so even though I had all that work, I said, you know what? I asked him to do it. He's almost done with it. He's going to do a much better job than I ever could with it. So, yeah, I can't wait for that. Just so you guys get a chance to hear what he's all about, here he is with Side Tavern. This is from Each Dawn I Die, a small collection of 12 short stories you can find on Audible, iTunes, all that good stuff. All right, hope you enjoy it. I'll talk to you guys next week. See you.
Side Tavern. Paulson logged off the computer and shut down the Amtrak's controls. What Hank would have been doing if it hadn't been for that damn van. The grisly accident outside San Diego had delayed his run by more than 2 hours. Overtime was always a pleasant addition to his engineer's salary, but the long day had taken its toll on him, and he was ready to get home. Hank waited until all the passengers were gone before he stepped off the train. A few of his porters nodded their good nights, and Hank headed for the escalator instead of the employee parking lot. His truck was in the shop, and he lived within walking distance of the station. It would have been easy to grab a cab, but Hank wasn't in a hurry now that he was off the train. Plus, he could use the exercise, and with any luck, the midnight air would clear his mind. The wreck was still heavy in his thoughts. The woman's head poking through the windshield. It had been the van's fault. It had slammed right into her Camry and knocked her car through the crossing gates. Hank couldn't have stopped in time. Hank looked up and down the block, not quite sure which way to go. He'd never used the pedestrian exit, or actually walked home. The blinking yellow traffic light, barely visible through the fog, had to be First Street. All he had to do was cross the tracks, go left at the light, and then walk another 6 or 7 blocks. He'd be home in half an hour. 3 teenagers wearing blue bandanas were hanging out at the corner. Hank didn't know if he should nod, make eye contact with them, greet them, or just keep his eyes down. They kept staring at him, letting him know he had no business being on their street. Hank opted for studying the sidewalk and the broken glass before turning left at the corner, his hard soles clicking on the concrete. His footfalls weren't the only ones, though. The teenager's footsteps echoed close behind him. Hank walked a bit faster, fighting the temptation to turn around and ask why they were following him. Did he disrespect them by not looking at them, or was he simply an easy target? Why the hell hadn't he called a cab? They matched his speed. Hank crossed the deserted street, didn't bother to look both ways. 2 sets of footsteps crossed with him. The third thug stayed on the other side, walked directly across from Hank, who could see him out of the corner of his eye. Hank took both hands out of his pockets in case he had to defend himself, and accelerated his stride. He flinched when one of the guys behind him cleared his throat.
Man, I just love this speed walking shit. Great way to stay in shape, huh, dudes?
Nah, player. It just gets me all sweaty, said the other in a deep voice.
When I get sweaty, I get pissed.
The intimidation tactic was working, but Hank wasn't about to give up his wallet just yet. Despite his pounding chest and burning legs, Hank kept up the pace. He searched both sides of the street for any sign of life, tried to remember passing any gas stations or liquor stores whenever he drove through this run-down stretch of town. Whether it was his nerves or Deuce and his partner talking behind him, Hank couldn't recall anything being open this late. The only lights ahead of him were traffic signals. If Hank tried to run, he'd guarantee a beating, or maybe worse. He only had $100 or so in his wallet, which he would gladly part with if they would leave him alone. But now that he'd led them this far, Hank didn't think they'd just walk away. A small neon sign flickered up ahead. Wrong Side Tavern. Hank had never noticed it before. Below the sign was a flashing arrow pointing down the alley. Hank figured he could call a taxi or cops from inside the establishment if he could make it to the entrance. "Hey, where you headed, white boy?" Deuce called. "You don't want to head down there." Hank kept walking, prayed he hadn't just made a terrible mistake and trapped himself in a dead end. Another glow was coming from halfway down the dark alley. Not caring what the thugs thought of him, Hank took off running toward the flashing neon. The sound of his slapping shoes and thundering heart blocked out all other noise as Hank raced past dumpsters and inky puddles. His lungs were on fire when he reached the entrance. Hank grabbed hold of the handle and yanked the door open. Much lighter than it looked, it flew open and out of his hand, banged against the wall. Hank caught the door on the rebound and slammed it shut behind him. Gripping the handle, he braced for a tug of war, but no one tried to pull back. There weren't any noises in the alley either, but people in the bar were talking, probably wondering what kind of drug he was tripping on. Hank let go of the handle and headed for the counter, accidentally bumped a man on crutches. The man, missing a leg, continued toward the back of the dimly lit bar, mumbled something about Hank needing to watch where he was going. Hank walked toward the bar, unable to remember ever being in a place so grim and depressing. Still, it was better than being mugged or even killed. He studied the empty tables with their dingy white tablecloths. The joint wasn't dirty, but it had a bad feel to it, unlike any other dive bar he'd been inside. The patrons slouching in the booths that lined both walls weren't here to watch a game or pick up chicks. Their dejected faces told him they came to this bar for one reason: to forget. "Would you mind calling me a cab?" Hank asked the burly bartender with thick glasses. His right arm was missing just below the shoulder. Hank didn't mean to flinch. "Well, that was quick. What is it?" The bartender sniffed at his armpit. "Do I offend?" "Oh, no." Hank looked at the grimy window, unable to see anything in the alley. "I just had one hell of a day." The bartender said he understood and picked up the phone. "One at the wrong side." After a pause, he thanked them and hung up. "They're on their way. Care for a drink while you're waiting?" Although he promised himself he was done with that, at least on a work night, Hank said, "Oh, why the hell not? Give me that stout." He had a lot on his mind. The thugs outside, the paperwork he'd have to face in the following weeks, even though he couldn't have avoided the wreck. If anyone in the bar deserved a drink, it was him. Hank took a seat on the stool and noticed that a track ran the length of the counter. He pointed to the rails and asked, "So, who's on the wrong side, you or me?" Only having one arm didn't slow the bartender. He set the mug between two rail ties and sent it sliding to Hank. "I'm afraid it's everyone who sets foot in this place." Hank raised his drink and took a long swig. "That's not very uplifting." "Yeah, but it's a catchy name, don't you think?" Hank nodded and took another drink, tried to sound nonchalant when he asked, "Is there a back door to this place, maybe somewhere else the cab can pick me up?" "Oh, there's no back door." He motioned toward the entrance with his stump. "That's the only way in or out. Why do you ask?" I'd hate for the cabbies not to find this place." "No worries. They'll come down the alley and right up to the door." The man scratched his stumbly black beard and studied Hank, the hint of a smile on his lips. "Let me guess. Someone follow you?" "Yeah. 3 black guys." How'd you know?" "If they keep scaring people into here, I'm going to have to start tipping them. You're lucky, though. I've heard about a couple of people who didn't make it in here."
I won't say it was them for sure, but it wasn't pretty. And Deuce is known to be good with his blade. Hank tried not to look at the stump. They ever mess with you? No one ever messes with us. That's why we like this place. It's almost like we don't exist. Hank looked around the sparsely populated bar. I don't mean to be rude, but isn't part of running a bar wanting people to come in? Attract more business? The thing is, ever since my accident, money hasn't meant a thing to me. Well, that must be nice. Hank finished his beer and checked his watch. Did they happen to say how long it would be? Well, they always say 20 minutes. Are they ever on time? Might as well make yourself comfortable. Looks like you could use another drink. Hank set his empty glass between the rails and slid it toward the bartender. It tipped over and shattered against the tie. "Aw, shit, I'm sorry," Hank said. The already quiet bar was now completely silent. He tried to help pick up the large pieces of glass, but the bartender waved him off. "Don't sweat it." The bartender held up a fresh mug and asked, "Another one?" Hank nodded, and the man filled the mug, set it between the rail ties, and slid it across the counter. Hank picked up his drink. "You make it look so easy. I didn't think I threw it that hard." The bartender leaned forward and whispered, "Glass gotta be full." Hank emptied his second round in 3 healthy gulps and handed it back. Maybe one more." The bartender poured another glass. "Hell of a day, huh?" "Hell of a year is more like it." "Work?" Hank nodded, tried to block the images from earlier in the day. The bartender slid the mug over. "What you do?" "I'm an engineer." "What kind? Mechanical?" Actually, I'm a train operator." "Dude, it was a joke. Take a look around." He pointed out the railroad signs plastered on the walls, the crossing signal next to the bathrooms, the various train paintings hanging from thick iron spikes jammed into the walls. "I know what an engineer is." "I'm sorry. My head's somewhere else." Hank took another drink. The bartender told him not to worry about it, and then excused himself to serve the wino in a wool hat at the far end of the bar. Hank looked at the large painting above the shelves of booze. He shuddered and set down his drink, afraid he might drop it. What kind of sick bastard would think the depiction of a train derailment was appropriate to display anywhere, especially in a place like this? Body parts scattered on the ground, some lying underneath the overturned engine car. Hank closed his eyes to block it out, but the death and destruction from the painting evoked images from today's accident, swirled together in a crimson collage. It didn't matter if the thugs were outside waiting for him. Hank slid off his stool, threw a 20 on the counter, and turned for the door. A beautiful brunette sat at the nearest table, her bright red blouse and matching beret a sharp contrast to the white tablecloth. Hank turned back to the bar, scooped up his money, and downed the rest of his beer. When the bartender returned, Hank asked who the woman was. "She's in here by herself, if that's what you're asking." "No, she just looks familiar." "None of my business who you know." He polished a glass trapped between the counter and his waist. "Why don't you go talk to her?" Hank stole a glance at the woman and then asked for a whiskey. He promised himself he'd stop after this one. Hell, the taxi would probably show up before he even had time to finish. You wouldn't happen to know what she drinks, would you?" "Can't say I've ever seen her in here before." "That'd be a question for her." "That's fine. Give me a screwdriver, another whiskey, and a water." "You're the boss." Hank balanced all 4 drinks in his hand and approached the table. She was so beautiful, her eyes so blue. Hank stumbled on his pickup line. "One thing I can't handle seeing is a woman in need of anything, and I noticed you were without a drink." In a melodic voice, she said, "Thank you for noticing, but I don't drink." "The good news is that I do. These 3 are for me." Hank set down the alcoholic beverages. "The water is for you, though." Her smile almost made the horrible day bearable. "That's thoughtful of you." "Mind if I sit?" Hank asked. I didn't think you'd want to." Now it was Hank's turn to smile, although he got the feeling he was missing something. As he sank into the chair, his legs disappeared beneath the long tablecloth. The woman didn't touch her water,
But Hank started on his whiskey and asked, "So what in the world are you doing in a place like this?" She adjusted her beret and said, "I don't know. I was on the 415 and then something told me to come here." Hank wondered if he'd heard correctly. "The 415? That's the one. Why?" "I just can't believe I didn't notice you." "Did you take it too?" Actually, I operated." "No fooling?" Not wanting to appear conceited, Hank said, "It's really no big deal. The thing practically runs itself." When he asked, the woman said her name was June. She patted the back of his hand. "I'm sure you're just being modest. You have so much responsibility." I suppose it does take its toll." Hank finished his drink, set it down. "How do you mean?" Hank pulled over the screwdriver but didn't take a drink. No need for her to suspect he was an alcoholic. Cranking up the emotion like a sad insurance commercial, he said, "Sometimes bad things happen, but you just have to deal with it and go on." "What happened, Hank?" She gave his hand a light squeeze. "Did something happen today?" Hank let out a long sigh, nodded, and gulped down half the screwdriver. "What? An accident? Was it an accident?" "Yeah. Some van plowed into a woman stopped at the crossing. It caused me to hit her too." "What was he doing?" "He was probably high, or just stupid, maybe texting. They'll find out in the autopsy." June took his hand in both of hers. "How can you stand it?" "The funny thing is that I don't feel that bad. This one wasn't my fault. I braked. Hard. Almost all of them couldn't have been avoided." "You've hit others?" "There are over 1,000 deaths a year on the rails, and I'm afraid I've got 8 of those." "And you haven't quit?" Hank finished the screwdriver. "That's what I was saying. The people I've hit don't bother me that much. Most of them are just strung out on drugs and want to die. Instead of suicide by cop, it's suicide by train. A decent person will just slit their wrists or pop some pills, stay indoors. Why mess up everyone else's day?" "That is pretty selfish." "Why do you think so many trains are delayed and canceled?" "Well, I've never thought of it like that." Hank took a swig of the second whiskey. "I feel worse about the animals. When I honk, they usually either freeze in fear or run directly down the tracks. I mean, imagine that. Imagine seeing someone's poodle sprinting for its life, knowing you can't do a thing to stop the tons of metal bearing down on it." June shook her head. "That's awful." Hank wiped his hand on his pants and smoothed the wrinkles. "Would you mind if we talked about something else?" Of course not. I'm so sorry." Hank smiled at her and told her not to be silly. "So, what about you? Is there a lucky guy waiting for you somewhere?" June shook her head so hard her hat nearly came off. No one wants me." "Are you serious?" June cast her eyes down. I don't have a lot to offer." "Don't say that. You're beautiful. That's something." June looked up, tears welling in her eyes. "I know what I am." "You're talking crazy." Hank got up from the table and said, "I'm going to get you a drink." At the bar, while Hank was clearing his tab, a loud squeaking came from the rear of the bar. An elderly man pulled a rusty red wagon toward the bathroom. It was hard to see him in the dim light, but it looked like he was carrying a pile of dirty clothes. "Here you go." The bartender handed Hank his change and said, It's just Jimmy. He's harmless." Hank carried 2 drinks back to the table. He took his seat and placed a bright green cocktail in front of June. I can't, really." She pushed it away from her. Hank took hold of her hands. "Just try it. It's a Midori sour, almost no alcohol in it." "I'm such a lightweight, Hank, and this stuff will run right through me." "You need it. We both need it." He eyed his whiskey and said, "Come on, beautiful. What do you say?" June sighed and stopped pushing away the drink.
I guess one won't kill me. That's more like it. Hank casually slipped his leg under the table, sticking it out to see how she'd react. If she pushed back against his foot, they'd be back in his bedroom within the hour. If she played it cool and moved away, it could take a date, maybe even a dinner or two. He was still blindly searching for her leg when the squeaking started again. What's with this place? Hank sat up, the mood ruined. What, they give discounts to cripples and crazies? June threw her head back in laughter. It was so loud it was almost terrifying. Not knowing what else to do, Hank asked, "Look, are we going to do this or not?" He held up his glass for a toast, mildly surprised when she joined him. He finished his whiskey and noticed a steady, dripping sound. It was coming from under the table. June set down her empty glass and asked Hank if he was okay. "I think I must have spilled something." "I'm sorry. It was probably me. I can be so clumsy sometimes." She licked her lips. "Would you mind looking for me?" Hank lifted the tablecloth and stuck his head under the table. A puddle of bright green liquid pooled around the legs of her chair. He was about to warn her to move her feet out of the way so they wouldn't get wet, when he realized she didn't have any. The green liquid dribbled out of June's exposed intestines and dangled a few inches below the ragged edge of her severed torso. Hank bolted upright, the back of his head slamming into the table, his mind filled with darkness. June's icy hands shocked him back into reality. She held both of his wrists, smiled as if nothing was wrong. "I told you, it runs right through me. At least since this afternoon." "Let go of me!" Hank tried to pull his arms free and get up from the table. "At least since this afternoon." Wait. He did know her. She was the woman from today. "Where are you going, Hank?" June squeezed his wrists, his tendons and bones grinding together painfully. Hank shouted for help, looked around the room, anywhere but at June, that beautiful face he'd seen sticking through the windshield. June wouldn't let go of him, even as he continued to back away. Her torso slid across the table, leaving a bloody trail as she knocked over their empty glasses. June's hat fell to the side, revealed her crushed skull that looked as if someone had hammered away at it with a brick. The skull he'd seen poking through the glass. But he hadn't done that. The van had hit her. It had run the flashing lights, slammed into her. Or had it? No. The woman had been stalled out on the tracks. Hank had seen her before the van came barreling at her. The van had been trying to help. Hank hadn't been able to hit the brakes in time. June crashed to the ground, brought the table down with her. Hank ripped his hands free, backed into the counter and spun around. He yelled to the bartender, "Call the cops! Call someone!" The bartender smiled and scratched at his beard. And why would I do that?" June dragged herself toward him on her elbows. Hank screamed, "Look at her!" "But you said I was beautiful," she wailed. The squeaking of the wagon made Hank freeze. The old man pulled the rusty red thing to the front door, dropped the handle. "To hell with you!" Hank shouted at June, to the bartender, to the patrons oozing out of their booths. He ran to the wagon and kicked the back of it, the pile of rags in the back falling out and somehow tangling around his legs. The rags were heavy, anchoring Hank to the floor. He tried to kick them off, but both of his legs were pinned. He looked down and saw a mixture of flesh and cloth. The raw meat nearly indistinguishable from the mangled jeans the woman had been wearing earlier today. Hank pulled on the door, but it wouldn't open. June kept calling him honey, creeping closer. The bartender whistled, tossed a sharpened rail spike in the air as he made his way over. The forms of disfigured patrons advanced upon the entrance that would never be an exit.